In this video, I'm going to show you how to use a few simple and readily available structural materials to make your O-gauge model train layout look more realistic. And we're starting right now. Hi, my name is Owen, and I'm continuing to build and expand my traditional O-gauge Lionel Polar Express model railroad layout. In these videos, I show you how I'm doing it and what I'm doing. Now's a great time to click the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. You're going to want to stick around to the end of this video to see me running 3 trains on my layout, as well as the Lionel Polar Express trolley. Most of the structural materials that I'll be showing you should be readily available at your local hobby stores. I also have a link below to Oakridge stores, where I bought my items online. In addition to O-scale, Oakridge also has these materials available in HO and N-gauge, and in some cases G-scale as well. Now let's get started.
First up is this safety ladder. I'm putting several of these around my layout to represent access points to the elevated track. In the real world, these ladders are also found in lots of industrial settings. You can use them the way I'm positioning them. You can also add them to trackside industrial structures. The first step is to cut the ladder and the safety cage to the right length. Keeping the scale in mind, cut the ladder to reach the height necessary. The safety cage should be approximately the same length as the ladder, but when you put them together, the cage will start about 8 to 12 scale feet above the bottom of the ladder and extend about 8 scale feet above the top. Glue the ladder and cage together, with the ladder closing the open side of the cage. I used an adhesive from Oakridge that's specifically made for styrene plastic. I recommend gluing them together before painting them so that the paint won't get in the way of the adhesive. I painted my ladder and cage white, but you should choose colors that are appropriate for where you're placing it on your layout. The final step for me was 2 little dabs of super glue on the back of the ladder to attach it to the elevated track structure. Next up is this I-beam. There are a lot of places on my layout where these I-beams are just what I need to finish off a structure or add more interest. Here I've painted it steel metallic. It simulates a structural girder. I'm also using I-beams to support and hide some of the electrical drops from the elevated track to the bus line under the train tables. These girders provide the structural support, and half-round conduit glued to the back of the girders hides the wires. Here's an example of what I did for one of the drops. In this backside view, the wires visible in the top joint here will become virtually invisible once I paint this. The bottom joints will be covered by snowscaping when I finish repairing this part of my layout. The Lionel Fast Track for the elevated track is supported by 1x6 kiln-dried poplar boards. I spray painted the bottom of the boards flat black. The top and sides and ends are spray painted soft iron metallic. I drilled holes for the electrical drops about every 40 to 50 inches. I'm using the half-round conduit to hide the wires coming out of the bottom of these boards. I'm using super glue to attach the conduit to the boards. Then I'm using Tester's flat black enamel to match the bottom of the boards. Moving on, here I'm using an O-scale open web truss over the side of the board. I painted it flat black to contrast with the soft iron metallic paint on the board. I used super glue to attach the truss to the board. I really like this look, so I'm planning to extend this all around the layout. I'll intersperse a few girders as well. My new Polar Express trolley was put in place quickly, so I could include it in the unboxing video. Now I'm going back and adding a boarding platform and other elements. Here's the boarding platform. The surface is a sheet of plastruct rough brick. This simulates the brick pavement that was very common during the age of steam. It's glued to a 1/16 inch thick sheet of basswood. That in turn is supported by 2 I-beams glued to the underside. I've made these simulated concrete columns out of wine corks, painted to look like cement, and then cut to the uniform height. The I-beams are supported by these columns. Once I have all of the boarding platforms glued in place, I'll do some weathering on them to make it look more realistic and older. I'm also going to be using that rough brick sheeting on a boarding platform here at the end, near where these benches are sitting, and I'll do another one at the far end. This pathway below will become winterscaped as I continue along. Because of the height difference between the boarding platform areas and the surrounding areas, I'm going to need to put some stairs in. I have stairs that I obtained from Oakridge stores that I'm going to be cutting and positioning in the ends of the boarding platforms to provide that access. I have two options for the stairs that I'll use to go up to the boarding platforms. The one on the right in white is no longer manufactured, so I only have this one piece. I want to make sure I put it to the best use, so I may hold off on that and use the gray for the boarding platforms. Either way, I'll need to do some cutting, and I'll need to make stair railings. To cut the structural materials, I use this hobby back saw and this hobby miter box. Then I go back and clean up the cuts with 220 grit sandpaper. Now that I've covered how to use the structural materials to make your layout look more realistic, it's time to run the trains. I'll turn on the electricity and pan the camera around the layout. Track number 1 is the outside loop on the main level. I have the Polar Express freight train running on track 1. It's pulled by a Lionel Lion Chief Plus Hudson steam locomotive with Milwaukee Road badging. The freight train is 15 cars long, plus the engine and tender. Track 2 is the inside loop on the main level. I have a Lion Chief Berkshire steam locomotive with Polar Express badging pulling an 8-car Polar Express passenger train. Track 3 is the elevated track. I have an early Polar Express ready-to-run set on track 3. The tender is newer with Lionel rail sounds. This Berkshire engine doesn't have traction tires, and the trim is very basic from back when Lionel first released the Polar Express. The trolley is on its own track, and it's its own power supply. 3 trains plus the trolley all in motion at the same time is a lot of fun to watch. If you've enjoyed this video, please click the thumbs up below and like it. Also, please subscribe so that you'll be notified every time I add a new video. It's a privilege to have you watching. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.